7 years ago, I started to very slowly declutter our home, and 6 months in, our lives started to completely transform. In today's video, I'm sharing the behind the scenes of our decluttering story, most of which I never saw coming. My goal for this video is to demonstrate how powerful decluttering can be. It has the power to impact so much more than just the stuff in our lives, and in my experience, has impacted every aspect of my life. For the sake of clarity, I've broken our story into phases. Our decluttering journey started very small. I had just given birth to our second child and I was struggling. Nearly every one of our clients reaches out after some major life transition, whether it's moving, a family illness, retiring, whether it was 6 weeks ago or 6 months ago. And for me, that big life transition was becoming a parent. I was struggling with postpartum, being home with 2 kids under 2, and just adjusting this new, chaotic, very different life. During that time, I started to give away my maternity clothes. I knew we weren't having any more kids, so it was a really easy spot for me to start. And then slowly, as the kids outgrew things, I would give away baby items and then eventually toddler items. At first, it was just to keep the clutter at bay. I was, getting rid of the wipe warmer so I could fit the grow clock there. But as I got rid of more and more things, I could feel myself getting lighter physically, mentally, emotionally, for the first time since becoming a parent. It felt so cathartic. And during a phase of life for me that was extremely stressful, I was grateful for any sort of therapeutic exercises. Things kept going like this for many months, tiny bit by tiny bit. It's not like we just all of a sudden got rid of everything in 1 month. And the key takeaway for this phase is that a slow journey might not be as flashy as, declutter your entire home in 30 days, but it works and it can have such a big impact. About 6 months after this first initial declutter was when things in our life started to change in all aspects. This is when we entered phase 2, which was all about money, and specifically the huge looming debt that was hanging over us. We had nearly $80,000 of debt, which was a mix of grad school, vehicles, and general consumer debt. We've been making the minimum payments for years, and I remember a time where I actually went ahead and tried to calculate whether it would be easier for us just to make the minimum payments for life rather than pay it off. That's how huge this felt to me. That's how unlikely it felt that we would ever pay it off. But once I started to live a life with less stuff, I started to crave this simplicity in our budget as well. It felt like as our physical space became more peaceful and free of clutter, that the areas of our lives that still were chaotic and cluttered, that they became more obvious and apparent to us. I remember the exact moment when I decided to turn things around financially. Just something inside of me triggered, and I was a woman on a mission. Within days, we had a plan exactly how we were gonna do it. We rejigged our budget to make those numbers work. We drastically slowed down our shopping, and we started selling our old stuff for cash left, right, and center. One thing I've learned over the last 7 years is how linked our stuff and our money are, whether we like it or not, and how craving simplicity in one often leads to craving simplicity in the other. Around this same time, I lost my dad, who had been my primary parent from age 13 on. He had been my go-to person for over 20 years. And it wasn't a tragic death. He was not well and we knew it was coming. But even though we knew we were gonna lose him and I was mentally prepared for it, it still shook me enough that I started to become acutely aware and grateful for every moment I had with my friends and my family and just on this earth. And I could feel myself getting really picky about how I spent my time and my energy and my resources, which, as you can guess, meant caring a lot less about the stuff in our lives and a lot more about the real true parts of life, like the human connections. And I became specifically focused on not allowing us to stay bogged down by our belongings, being financially stable, going on adventures with Scott and the kids, and creating a life that aligned with my heart, regardless of what everyone else in the world was doing. During this time, we also did our first ever no spend month. The concept is super simple: buy only essentials for 30 days. This strategy was perfect for us because it was twofold. It saved us money and it slowed down the clutter from coming into our house. What we didn't expect was for it to change our consuming habits forever. This exercise opened our eyes to so many things that we were buying because everyone else was, out of habit, out of boredom, out of stress, out of overwhelm. And our mindset completely shifted when it came to consuming. When I was shopping, I was now thinking, can we afford this? Do we have space for this? Where exactly am I going to store it? How long am I going to own this? Do we have the time and energy to maintain this item? And equally as important, it opened our eyes to what life was like without all the stuff. And it gave us more time, more freedom, and way less stress, which is exactly what I was craving, especially in this next phase, which is what I have called the overwhelm. This was when I went back to work after my second maternity leave, and I had always planned on going back to work. My goal was never to be a stay-at-home parent. I loved the idea of going back to the office and being around adults and using other parts of my brain. However, within a few weeks, I could barely keep my head above water. By this point, we had decluttered a lot of the physical items from our life. However, this phase taught us that the clutter extended into more than just our physical spaces. It extended into our calendars and to our schedules. And our schedule was jam-packed. Every single second of every single day was filled with busyness, and not necessarily busyness that felt true and good to me. I just kept thinking there has got to be more than this. But as women do, I kept going for several more years. The key takeaway from this phase is that all worthwhile journeys have their ups and downs. And it's these low points, these tricky parts, these challenging times that actually teach us all of the lessons, and it makes the good times seem that much more amazing. We were about 3 years in when we got to phase 6, or what I call the lonely phase. Doing things differently than everyone else has never been my strong suit. I much prefer going along with the crowd, going with the flow. It is easier and it is relaxing. However, this dang decluttering journey just got me way off track. I did so many weird things. I tracked our incoming for an entire month. I started a blog and an Instagram all about simplifying our life. I packed away every single one of my kids' toys for 30 days as an experiment. I quit an amazing government job with a pension. Spoiler alert on that. We did a buy nothing new 2022 where we purchased only secondhand items for an entire year. And I made videos documenting this journey, and I absolutely loved it. But it was very different than what anyone else in my real life, my friends and family, were doing. And what I felt like a lot of the world was doing, which was hard and lonely. What I learned in this phase is that doing things that align with your heart aren't necessarily going to be the things that align with the heart of your friends and family. And that's okay. Because on the days when I feel so lonely and very solo in this world, I remind myself that the only thing worse than that feeling is feeling like you're not being true to yourself. As I just let slip, phase 7 was a career change. I left my corporate job to organize in homes for families who are also looking for that peace and clutter-free space. This was definitely one of the most drastic changes we made, and I wouldn't recommend it for everyone. This new job is less money, but it's more flexibility, which is exactly what I was looking for. I desperately wanted to be able to pick up the kids from school sometimes. And I still can't do it every day. However, I still can do it sometimes, which I absolutely love. 2 big lessons from this phase. Number 1, when I was making this decision, I asked for help. I seeked out multiple coaches and counselors to help me, create that vision for myself and my business. I put a lot of time and work into making this decision. I didn't just wake up one day and think, hey, let's give that a shot. And then again, when I realized I needed help in the business, I hired a team. I got more help. Asking for help is not a weakness. It is a strength, and it is necessary. Probably around year 5 is when we entered what I like to call the promised land. Year 5, that sounds so long. And it doesn't mean that things are perfect all the time. This is where we got to a point where I finally felt good. I got used to other people thinking we were weird or that they just didn't get it. I stopped trying to be perfect. For me, the promised land is being able to pick up my kids from school sometimes, not wasting all my free time managing all the stuff we own, and doing work that feels true to me. Sometimes our most powerful transformations start with the speck of an idea. Your story is obviously going to be different than mine, but I want to show how powerful decluttering can be and how it reaches far beyond the stuff that we're getting rid of. I know that life is going to throw a million more challenges our way until our last day on earth, as it does, but I feel so at peace knowing that I have dedicated the last few years putting effort into refocusing my life and our family to tackling hard, important decisions rather than just going along with the norm because it's the norm. I hope that whatever your story is, you're able to do what feels right for you, and that you are able to let go of the clutter in your life, including the clutter you can see and maybe the clutter that you can't see.